Good day, everyone. We are Group 11, and we are here to discuss ACL reconstruction.
I am Bianca Uy, and I will report about the subjective evaluation and the subjective findings of our case. As for a subjective evaluation, here is the patient's demographics. The patient has initials J, N, his gender is male, he is 18 years old, left-handed, and he is also non-asthmatic, non-hypertensive, and non-diabetic. He complains of the sudden intermittent aching pain on his right knee graded 3/10 using the subjective pain scale, 0 as no pain and 10 having the worst possible pain. It is elicited when he runs for about 10 minutes and it is relieved when he is rested. He says that his condition started 3 months ago when he twisted his right knee with his foot planted on the floor after landing from a rebound during a basketball game. He heard a popping sound, and redness, swelling, and pain were also noted. He felt the pain after about 15 minutes, and he graded it as 8/10 using the subjective pain scale. He placed ice for pain relief, and he says that the pain decreased from 8/10 to 5/10. He discontinued playing because he is unable to independently ambulate due to feeling of kakalasang tuhod and pain. He went to the doctor immediately and was prescribed with painkiller twice a day for 1 week. For his ancillary procedures, he says that he underwent x-ray and that the finding was that his ACL was completely torn. 1 week after his doctor's consultation, he was referred to surgery using the hamstring graft arthroscopic approach. For his physical therapy management, he says that he receives strengthening, stretching, balance exercises, and TENS. For his past medical history, he says that no other significant injuries were noted in any area of his body. For his family history, he says that his mother has a history of hypertension, although the patient states that he himself is non-hypertensive. For his home situation, he says that he lives with his parents and a brother in a condominium on the 7th floor. He uses the elevator to go up or down. He also describes the steps it takes him to go to his destination, such as from the front desk of his condo to the elevator, which takes about 35 steps. From the elevator to the condo unit, it takes about 25 steps. From the front door of the condo unit, it takes 20 steps to get to the bedroom. And from the front door of the condo unit, it takes about 15 steps to get to the bathroom. For his lifestyle and social environment, he is a non-smoker, non-alcoholic drinker. He is a physical therapy student and a basketball varsity player. He goes to the school via the car in which his father is the driver. His class is usually on the 2nd floor with about 32 steps in the stairs. His schedule is 6 a.m. to 12 p.m. for training, 1 p.m. to 7 p.m. of classes with 2 hours break in between every day except Sunday. His training includes jogging, agility drills, and basketball training drills. He is not yet training right now because of his surgery. For his goal, he says that he wants to be able to run and train again without pain. For us to further analyze the case of our patient, it is important for us to know what a ligament is. A ligament is what connects a bone to bone, and in our knees there are 4 main ligaments: the ACL, PCL, MCL, and the LCL. According to Bredom, the ACL courses from the medial wall of the lateral femoral condyle anteromedially to the anterior spine of the tibial plateau. It restrains anterior displacement of the tibia relative to the femur and the internal rotation of the tibia. They cross each other to form an X with the posterior cruciate ligament at the back. So the ACL and the PCL controls the back and forth movement of our knees. So for the MCL and the LCL, they are the collateral ligaments, or the ones found on the sides of our knees. They control the sideways motion of our knees and brace it against valgus or varus forces. So for the ACL, the mode of injury includes contact and the non-contact one. Contact injury is described as when there is a blow on the lateral side of the knee, which may disrupt the unhappy triad or the ACL, the MCL, and the medial meniscus. The non-contact mode of injury happens when the tibia is externally rotated on a planted foot. Such is the case of our patient. According to Kistner, the second most common non-contact mode of injury is the forceful hyperextension. According to Bradom, ACL tears are the most functional devastating one since it has a crucial role in the dynamic knee instability. ACL contains mechanoreceptors which can detect changes in the tension, speed, acceleration, direction of movement, and the position of our knee joint. So it involves our proprioception and kinesthesia, or the ones which are involved in the control of our movement and posture. They are specialized types of sense of touch. So for proprioception, it involves the unconscious sensation which contribute to movement, while kinesthesia involves the conscious awareness to movement. Here are the symptoms which can be found on an acute ACL injury. There is a feeling or hearing of a popping sound in the knee. Pain and inability to continue the activity with swelling and instability of the knee may also be present. They are all reported by our patient, which really confirms that the patient has an ACL tear or injury. For the ACL sprain, it is important for us to know the severity or the grading of the sprain. It includes 3 grades: grade 1, grade 2, and grade 3. For grade 1, it is when the ligament is mildly damaged. It is slightly stretched but is able to help the knee stable. For the grade 2 sprain, it is when the knee becomes loose. It is often referred to as a partial tear of the ligament. For grade 3 sprains, it is when there is a complete tear of the ligament. The ligament has been split into 2 pieces and the knee joint is now unstable. So why is it important for us to note for ACL injury with fracture? So it is because of the second fracture or the presence of the small capsular avulsion fracture on the lateral tibial plateau which may be present with ACL tear. This now happens when there is a severe varus force on the knee with the internal rotation of the tibia according to Brazier. So here are now the indications for surgery or ACL reconstruction. Patients who have disabling instability of the knee due to ACL deficiency because the lateral collateral ligament and the posterolateral joint capsule may be stressed when the ACL is deficient and they may become lax and in which a quadriceps avoidance gait may develop. A quadriceps avoidance gait, according to Kistner, is described as a reduction in the magnitude of the flexion movement about the knee during the limb loading phase of a gait due to the patient's effort to reduce the contraction of the quadriceps. So, ACL reconstruction is also indicated for those who have frequent episodes of buckling knees and those who are frequently into high-demand activities.
So, good morning. I'm Antonio Romero and I'll be your reporter for the objective. So, let's first start with the vital signs. So, these are the vital signs of our patient. And now let's compare them to the normal. As you can see, all are normal except for the heart rate, which is lower than 60 beats per minute. This is because for athletes, the resting and submaximal exercise heart rate are typically lower. This is because they have a more effectively heart pump and use oxygen more efficiently. Moving on to ocular inspection, the patient is independently ambulatory without assistive device, endomorph, has atrophy on the right VMOs, has a scar on the medial and lateral portion of the knee, has gait deviations, and has no swelling. So the patient is independently ambulatory because in accordance to Kistner, in about 4 to 10 weeks of peak rehabilitation, the patient can now walk or independently without the crutches. Patient is an endomorph, meaning he's a bit bulky because he's an athlete. Has atrophy in the right VMOs because of disuse atrophy, because of the use of immobilizers for a long period of time, and which may be associated with gait deviations as well, which I'll discuss more later. The scar in the right and the medial and lateral portion of the right knee is actually an arthroscopic approach scar. So this is a picture of a scar in arthroscopic approach. As you can see, there are 3 incisions, but in accordance to joint surgery and arthroscopy, incisions may be 2 or 3 points in arthroscopic approach of the right knee or of the knee. The patient exhibits with gait deviations, which I'll discuss more in gait analysis, and has no swelling, meaning he has no inflammation in the area. In palpation, grade 1 tenderness on the right anterior knee, has bilateral tightness of hamstrings, and normothermic and normotonic on all 4s. So in normothermic, there's no signs of acute inflammation in the area. Moving on to range of motion. So all major joints of bilateral upper extremity, lower extremity, trunk, and neck are within normal limits, actively and passively assessed, pain-free with normal end field except for the following. So in the right, the patient exhibits with extension lag of the knee. And in right and left SLR, which is used to test the length of hamstrings, is also lacking because the normal is about 60 to 70 degrees in accordance to Levanti. So this shows a decrease of length of hamstrings. So let's discuss. So according to Kistner, post-operative loss of motion is a potential complication, and loss of full knee extension and persistent quadriceps weakness are recognized as significant complication. So this is because in post-op ACL reconstruction, there is loss of motion of the knee. This may be due to cutting of some muscles like the hamstrings, but since this is an arthroscopic approach, it is also due to immobilization, since there is precautionary motion that should be observed in post-op ACL treatment. So there is loss of patellar mobility, may also be the cause of loss of motion, and there is tightness of the hamstrings. So the tightness of the hamstrings may be due to the use of the hamstring graft, like I said before. Let's now move on to manual muscle testing. So all major muscles of bilateral upper extremity, lower extremity, trunk, and neck are grossly graded 5 out of 5 using break tests except for the following, which is the right knee flexors and right knee extensors, which are both 4 out of 5. So hamstring graft can have a short and long-term knee flexor weakness, since cutting up some parts of the muscle may cause the weakness. So loss of multi extension and persistent quadriceps weakness are recognized as significant complications. So this table shows the advantage and disadvantage of the use of the hamstring tendon graft. So high tensile strength than ACL with quadrupled graft. So this shows why young athletes may want to go to ACL reconstruction to prevent the recurrence of re-injury of the ACL instead of just the conservative approach. So there is no disturbance of the epiphyseal plate in skeletally immature patients, especially in young patients. So evidence of hamstring regeneration at donor site and loss of knee flexor muscle strength can remediate in 20 years post-operatively. So tendon to bone fixation is not reliable as bone to bone like in patellar tendon graft because it's bone, it's more tense, has a higher tensile strength, so it can, it's a bone. Longer healing time, hamstring muscle strain during early rehabilitation, not discussed by the patient because his past medical history shows no significant. didn't say anything about a hamstring muscle strain early on. Short and long-term knee flexor weakness. So as seen in our patient, he has knee flexor weakness and possible increase in anterior knee translation. Moving on to anthropometric measure. So this is just to measure the atrophy of the VMOs. So there's a difference of 6, 7, and 7. So meaning the right is smaller than the left. So let's now move on to sensory testing. So 100% intact sensation on the right knee as to light, touch, pain, temperature, and pressure, with deep sensation of right knee proprioception with 3 out of 5 trials. So in sensation, because in surgery there may be a damage of the infrapatellar branch of the saphenous nerve. This nerve can be found in the anterior medial aspect of the knee, just below the patella. So this exhibits pain during kneeling and maybe loss of sensation in the skin near the patella since it supplies the skin near the patella. So in deep sensation of right knee proprioception, so ACL provides neurologic feedbacks which affects both joint position and reflex stabilization of joint proprioception. So essentially, the lack of proprioception can affect the stability of the joint and may cause re-injury. Proprioception can decrease after capsular and ligamentous injury, but restore via ACL reconstruction or rehabilitation. And knee proprioception may be impaired due to the lack of proprioceptive exercise in previous PT sessions. So in gait analysis, so the patient again is in-depth ambulatory without assistive device on level surface with the following gait deviations. So there's the decreased swing phase on right and decreased knee flexion during heel strike to mid stance. So this is because of prolonged use of knee immobilizer. So essentially, nasanay na ang patient na laging naka-extend yung knee. So that's why during heel strike and mid stance, there is essentially a decrease in knee flexion can be observed. So in our plan, we try to do some interventions which address this impairment. And lastly, let's now go to the functional assessment. So there is minimum difficulty in running as manifested by pain, graded 3 out of 10, using subjective pain scale after 6 minutes. So how we did this test is essentially the patient will run for about 10 minutes and we will time it until the patient will feel pain, and we graded the pain. So there's minimum difficulty in jumping as manifested by no counter movement in 2 out of the 5 trials. So in 2 of the 5 trials, there's no counter movement. How we did this assessment is we let the patient shoot or jump. So in some jumping, there's no counter movement. So moderate difficulty in sidestepping towards the right as manifested by pain graded 5 out of 10 using subjective pain scale after 6 steps in 2 out of the 5 trials. So the test is just sidestepping to the left 10 times, sidestepping to the right 10 times per trial. So the patient sidesteps to the left 10 times, and after the 6 steps sidestepping to the right, he felt the pain.
For the inconsistencies for the subjective assessment, the ancillary procedure which was used in the case for diagnosing ACL tear was X-ray. ACL tears cannot be diagnosed using an X-ray. An X-ray can only show presence of broken bones, bone fragments in the knee, ACL avulsion, or blood effusion in the knee. An MRI or magnetic resonance imaging is considered the gold standard in identifying an ACL tear or other problems such as meniscal tears or other ligament injuries. According to Siegel, Albanese, and Siegel D. 2012, anterior cruciate ligament injuries, anatomy, physiology, biomechanics, and management of the Clinical Journal of Sport Medicine. MRI is considered the gold standard in identifying an ACL tear because it has a 95% specificity and an 86% sensitivity. MRI can visualize both bundles of the native ACL, which is an important information for surgical reconstruction when the double bundle technique is used. For the additional tests and examinations, for the subjective part, there are 7 additional questions that we need to ask. First is for the chief complaint. The patient should be asked on how painful his knee was when running using the subjective pain scale. This is because running is an eliciting factor. Second is for the history of present illness, wherein the patient was not asked about the frequency and duration of his first PT management. The patient should be asked about the times he had therapy for a week and for how many weeks. Third is for the HPI again. The patient was not asked on how long did it take before he had the surgery. This is important because according to Annie Hayashi on the case for early reconstruction of ACL, excellent clinical results can be achieved following anterior cruciate ligament reconstructions performed soon after injury using autograft hamstrings. This is according to Dr. Craig Botany. The results from Dr. Botany's perspective, randomized clinical trial contradict a long-standing belief that surgical reconstruction of an acutely torn ACL should be delayed for at least 3 weeks. According to Dr. Botany, they found that those patients who had early reconstruction surgery quickly regained their pre-injury range of motion and felt much better. If the surgery is performed shortly after the injury, the body has to heal from just one trauma. When the surgery is delayed, the knee recovers from the first injury. The hemarthrosis resolves and motion is restored. The subsequent surgery is perceived by the body as a second hit that requires healing to commence again. This was taken in the website of the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons. Fourth is the name of the particular drug used to relieve the pain was not mentioned in the past medical history as well as its dosage. Fifth, the number of steps from the patient's bedroom to his bathroom was not asked in the home situation. This is important because if ever the patient finds it hard to walk or to run, then there should be adaptive measures used. Sixth is the intensity of training. This was not asked for the social environment. This is important because it can be a factor in tearing the anterior cruciate ligament. If the intensity of training is high, it can be modified so that the patient will not put much stress to the ligaments as well as other structures because unwanted stresses can cause injury. Seventh is the particular time frame when the patient wants to go back to training. This is important because the patient is a varsity player. The target time of the patient can become a basis for the therapist to determine whether the PT's short-term goals and long-term goals are aligned with that of the patient. We can also determine whether the target time of the patient is achievable. For the objective part, the scar mobility and the presence of adhesions were not noted in the palpation part. It is important because this might be the cause of the limitation of motion, and there are therapeutic exercises that can address this. For the functional analysis, stair negotiation should be assessed since the patient uses the stairs in school and his classes are mostly in the second floor. Aside from this, stair climbing is part of the activities of daily living. We can also use functional outcome measures to determine the level of disability of the patient. The Lower Extremity Functional Scale, or LEFS, is a questionnaire containing 20 questions about a person's ability to perform everyday tasks. The LEFS can be used by clinicians as a measure of patients' initial function, ongoing progress, and outcome, as well as to set functional goals. The questionnaire contains 20 questions about a person's ability to perform everyday tasks. The scoring scale is 0 to 80. All the 20 items are scored with a maximum score of 4 for each item. The columns on the scale are summed to obtain a final score, and the patients are provided with 20-item instrument on paper and instructed to indicate their current level of difficulty with each activity. The scoring includes the following. The columns on the scale are summed to get a total score. The maximum score is 80. For the interpretation of scores, the lower the score, the greater the disability. The minimal detectable change is 9 scale points. The minimal clinically important difference is also a 9 scale point. The percent of maximal function is equals to the LEFS score divided by 80 times 100. For the performance, the potential error at a given point in time was positive negative 5.3 scale points. Test-retest reliability was 0.94. Construct reliability was determined by comparison with the SF36. Another one is the Knee Injury and Osteoarthritis Outcome Score, or KOOS. This is intended to be used for a knee injury that can result in post-traumatic osteoarthritis. For example, ACL injury, meniscal injury, chondral injury, and others. This consists of 5 subscales: pain, other symptoms, function in a daily living, or ADL, function in sport and recreation, and knee-related quality of life, or QOL. The previous week is the time period considered when answering the questions. Standardized answer points are given and each question is assigned a score from 0 to 4. A normalized score, 100, indicating no symptoms and 0 indicating extreme symptoms, is calculated for each subscale. Scoring instructions are available in a separate document, the KOOS scoring. A total score has not been validated and is not recommended. For the purpose of an RCT, KOOS subscale scores can be aggregated and averaged as the primary outcome. The 5 individual KOOS subscale scores are then given as secondary outcomes to enable clinical interpretation.
Other conditions may present the same signs and symptoms with an ACL tear. I will be presenting a list of these conditions along with tests that may differentiate them from an ACL tear. Before that, an ACL tear is caused by an external rotatory force in the knee while the foot is planted on the ground, and pain may or may not be felt after this event. An anterior drawer test and a Lachman test will give you an idea whether this structure really is involved, and an MRI will confirm this tear. The first condition is a PCL tear, which is caused by a backward force on the tibia while the knee is flexed. This force is often powerful. Pain is felt at the retropatellar area and instability usually goes unnoticed. A posterior drawer test is done to check an involvement of this ligament, and a posterior sag sign is always present. An MRI will also confirm a tear to this ligament. A meniscal tear is caused by a twisting force on the knee while the knee is flexed. The meniscus may also be injured during an injury to the ACL. Patients usually feel a locking of the knee while they walk, and the joint may feel stiff. On performing the Atlee's distraction and compression test, pain will be felt during compression, which is indicative of a meniscal involvement. An MRI will further confirm a tear to the meniscus. Last is an MCL tear, which is caused by an excessive valgus force or an excessive external rotatory force on the knee. When the MCL is torn, a popping sound isn't usually heard, and it may also be injured along with the ACL. Pain is usually felt medial to the joint, either above or below the joint line. Valgus stress testing is done to confirm an injury to the MCL, while an MRI will show the tear itself.
Okay, Benji Lupo reporting for ICF classification. Okay, so here's the chart. ito po yung chart ng presentations po ng pasyente and their corresponding activity limitations, participation restrictions, environmental factors, and personal factors. Okay, so iisa-isahin po natin. So, here are the impairments. So, sudden aching on right knee, which is a direct impairment, and loss of motion of right knee extension and bilateral knee flexion with knees flexed, which is also a direct impairment. Indirect impairments improve atrophy of right vastus medialis obliquus, gait deviations, spasm on right knee, tightness of bilateral hamstrings, weakness of right knee flexors and extensors, and decreased knee proprioception on the right due to a complete tear of ACL. Activity limitations, minimum difficulty in running after 6 minutes due to pain, and minimum difficulty in jumping with absence of counter movements. This is corresponds to the proprioception problems on the right knee. Okay, participation restrictions, so difficulty in fulfilling his role as a college student and as a varsity basketball player. Environmental factors, so the classroom is situated on second floor with approximately 32 stair steps. And also the distance of room from the lobby of the condo is also to be considered. Personal factors, so patient is a basketball varsity player, so he's an athlete. And patient has a positive family history of hypertension. Both of them can affect the prognosticating factors. They can either be negative or positive.
Intervention scenario. Our intervention scenario is primarily restored because patient will have a good response to treatment and all impairments can be addressed with the intervention. Patient has no competitive basketball games as of the moment, so PT treatment will be the primary priority of the patient. Prognosis. The prognosis is excellent because this is the first injury of the patient on the knee area, and knowing the age of the patient and the type of lifestyle he is living, there will be a good response to the treatments that will be given to him, and full recovery is very likely. There are no specific health conditions that was reported by the patient which may hinder or slow down the recovery process. Long-term goal, rehabilitative. Patient will demonstrate running and jumping activities at least 30 minutes without pain after 8 months of PT session. Preventive. Patient will verbalize the importance of warm-up exercises and demonstrate the importance of knee protection by wearing knee brace during jumping and running activities to prevent recurrence of ACL injury after one PT session.
My name is Via Canita, and I will discuss about the problem list and short-term goals. Since our intervention scenario is restore, we will prioritize our problem list with the impairments first before the functions. So the first problem is the sudden intermittent aching pain on right knee graded 3/10 using subjective pain scale, and grade 1 tenderness on right anterior knee. The second will be the limitation of motion of right knee flexion, bilateral hip flexion with knee extended, tightness of hamstrings, and 5-degree extension lag. The third will be the atrophy of right vastus medialis obliquus, weakness of knee flexors graded 4/5, and knee extensors graded 4/5. The fourth will be proprioceptive deficits on right knee by 3/5 trials. And the fifth is gait deviations with decreased swing phase on right and decreased knee flexion during heel strike to mid stance on right. And the sixth problem is functional, which is minimum difficulty in running as manifested by pain graded 3/10 using subjective pain scale after 6 minutes. Minimum difficulty in jumping as manifested by no counter movement in 2/5 trials, and moderate difficulty in sidestepping towards right as manifested by pain graded 5/10 using subjective pain scale after 6 steps in 2/5 trials. Our short-term goals will depend on the problem list. So first, patient will report no tenderness and pain from grade 3/10 using subjective pain scale on right knee after 3 PT sessions to decrease difficulty in running. Second, patient will demonstrate increase in range of motion of right knee extension and straight leg raising with knee extended by 10 degrees after 2 weeks of PT session to decrease difficulty in running. Third, patient will demonstrate decreased atrophy of vastus medialis obliquus as manifested by an increased strength of right knee flexors and extensors by 1 grade after 4 weeks to decrease difficulty in running. Fourth, patient will demonstrate decreased proprioceptive deficits by 2 trials after 3 weeks of PT sessions to decrease difficulty in running. Fifth, patient will improve gait as manifested by increased knee flexion at heel strike to midstance with verbal cues after 2 weeks of PT sessions. Sixth, patient will have decreased difficulty in running, jumping, and sidestepping as manifested by no pain after 7 minutes, counter movement in 4/5 trials, no pain after 18 steps in 4/5 trials, respectively, after 3 weeks of PT sessions.
So for the plan, patient will be seen and treated as an outpatient for 3 times a week for 8 weeks with the following treatments. Conventional TENS using TENS Med 931 using Program S with 100 Hz, 100 microseconds for 20 minutes based on patient's tolerance on the right knee to reduce pain. Prone knee hang with 5 pounds ankle weights on the right for 8 minutes to increase range of motion. PNF stretching using hold and relax on bilateral hamstrings for 15 seconds hold times 5 reps to increase range of motion. Progressive resistive exercises of right VMO using 10 pounds ankle weights for 10 reps and 3 sets to increase strength. Progressive resistive exercises of the right hamstrings using 10 pounds ankle weights for 10 reps and 3 sets to increase strength. Step ups with 10 pounds dumbbells on each hand for 10 reps and 3 sets to increase strength. Lunges with 10-pound dumbbells on each hand for 10 reps and 3 sets to increase strength. Ball catching while squatting on a wobble board for 10 reps and 2 sets to increase balance. Gait training with verbal and tactile cues for 100 meters and 2 sets to improve gait. Running, then shooting simulation for 8 reps and 2 sets to improve running and jumping biomechanics. And side steps using ladder for 2 rounds to improve sidestepping. Next is the home exercise program. First would be the hot compress on the right anterior knee for 20 minutes to reduce pain. Self-stretch of right knee extensors while long sitting for 15 seconds hold and 3 reps to increase range of motion. Hamstring doorway stretch times 15 seconds hold times 4 reps to increase range of motion. Step ups with bag with 3 books times 10 reps times 3 sets to increase strength. Progressive resistive exercises of the right VMO using 10-pound ankle weights for 10 reps and 3 sets to increase strength. Progressive resistive exercises of the right hamstrings using 10 pounds ankle weights for 10 reps and 3 sets to increase strength. Lunges with 1 liter jug on each hand for 10 reps and 3 sets to increase strength. Gait training with mirror feedback for 100 meters and 2 sets to improve gait. Running, then shooting simulation for 8 reps and 2 sets to improve running and jumping biomechanics. And side steps using household objects such as ribbons as obstacles for 2 rounds to improve sidestepping. Patient will be educated about the proper gait patterns and its importance in reducing injury. Educate patient on the importance of stretching, warm up, and cool down, especially during strenuous exercises. Usage of proper body mechanics in bending or lifting activities to avoid further injury. Also, patient will be educated to not overexert specifically during the early phases of rehabilitation and that the patient should be educated on the restrictive movements that may cause the recurrence of the injury. And lastly, for progression. For the first week of progression, for stretching exercises, there is either an increase in the seconds hold or an increase in the weights given to increase the range of motion. For progressive resistive exercises, there is mostly an increase in the weights given for the patient to increase strength. And for activities such as gait training and to improve the balance of the patient, it is mostly an increase in the intensity or number of repetitions or an increase in the difficulty, such as from a two-legged stance to a one-legged stance. And for after the third week, the patient is expected to have a normal range of motion as well as normal strength and normal gait patterns, and additional exercises are given for the patient to be ready for more harder tasks such as sports related tasks. Thus, box jumps and depth jumps are given as a tool to increase the patient's strength.